Says go live. Here we are. Yay!
Woo-hoo!
Woo! I have known Gretchen for 15 years, something like that. I don't know. Gretchen happens to be one of my dearest and most kindred bosom friends, but she's also just happens to be the country's premier vegan animal rights poet. And I met Gretchen when I was finishing up Educated, or no, I was still working on it. And I was looking for people who were sort of working in different spaces. And Gretchen does wonderful prison education, and she does animal rights work. And I remember getting her poetry. I remember getting your poetry, Gretchen, and I was just blown away. I was literally, I was following my husband around, just reading. No, listen to this one. Listen to this one. He was like, okay, she's really good, because you're so good, and I was starstruck, quite frankly, by your talent. So I am so glad to be able to introduce you to our larger Educated audience. For people who don't know Gretchen formally, she is a poet, educator, and indie bookseller living in New York's Hudson Valley. She has taught and or administrated with prison education programs, mostly college, since 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Has 3 poetry collections that she's published. There's Kind, of course, which is the re-release that just came out, which we're celebrating for Poetry Month this month. And then we have Visiting Days with Willow Books, and that imagines a maximum security men's New York State prison like the ones where she has taught, endorses Red Spaces, which is a more personal collection. And then she's got chapbooks and things. Go to GretchenPrimack.com to follow her. She's amazing. Gretchen, welcome.
Hi, Marisa, my love.
Hi, darling. So tell us a little bit about, first I want to hear about your vegan story, but first I want to hear a little bit about Kind. Why are we talking about Kind today? What is exactly a reissue of a poetry book, and why was it reissued and how?
Right, that can be a little confusing because people are like, wait, I've had a copy of Kind since like 2013. What's going on? Oh, I heard her reading from Kind 5 years ago. What's going on? So what's going on is that, yes, there was a book called Kind, of poems called Kind, that came out in 2013 and has had a beautiful life since then. But the folks at Lantern Books approached me and said, if you ever wanted to reissue this, we would be game to do that. And we talked more about it, and it started to sound very exciting. And it allowed for some great things to happen. For instance, it's got 10 more poems in it, because things have happened since 2013. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's been this pandemic going on. And I don't know if you've heard of, there's something called climate change, which I think, you should probably tell folks about, because they probably.
I'll try to remember about that.
And there were that right there is Neville, the dog, who wants to weigh in on all things poetic. And you may also hear from Ramona, the dog, just an FYI to everybody.
Yes, as if we can't tell that you're a dog lover by this very gorgeous cover. That's another thing that's different with this edition is your art.
Yeah, so this edition has a beautiful new cover that speaks much more, I think, to what the book is about and to our moment. And that is a painting by the genius Dana Ellen. And if you look behind me, you could probably guess that is also a painting by Dana Ellen. I'm a big fan of her work. She has several images in here. In fact, this amazing painting, which is called Kitten Nuggets, is in the book, as are several other of her images, and images by another exceptional vegan artist named Jane O'Hara. And finally, and nepotistically, several images from my beloved, who is a painter. And that was really fun because with Dana and Jane, what I did was go to their existing work and pick through and say, can I use this one? And can I use it? Oh, that would be perfect for that poem, so that paintings and the poems can be in a conversation because art is art, right? We're all doing the same thing. So let's converse. And with Gus, I could actually commission. I could say, you know what? I need a mouse. Oh, could you make
I love his mouse. I love his mouse.
He did the mouse. He did the elephants for the poem Ringling. Very beautiful. And he did the magnificent fish. That painting is called Happy Tilapia. Because I was very excited to have the opportunity to write a poem about fish, because why are we always forgetting the fish? What gives, right?
Yeah.
So, so the art kind of speaks to that. And I'm very excited about that being part of this new collection.
Well, it's gorgeous. It's, mine arrived several weeks ago, and I'm rediscovering your work all over again. Even the ones that I had loved before, just sort of revisiting them later gives them a different feel also, and you can appreciate them in a different way. And they are just so special. I hope you'll share some with us.
I'd be happy to. Do you have any recommendations?
Yes. I love, oh God, it's so hard. I love them all. I was trying to pick, but I think Holstein is good for now. We've got Mother's Day coming up.
Okay.
And dairy and the relationship with mothers and babies is very much in the ether in the animal rights world. Also, that COVID poem with the animals, I had those similar thoughts this time last year, but you were able to write them down in a really gorgeous way that I think a lot of people will relate to. So I would love to start off with those. Can we hear those?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we start with COVID one? I think there's two COVID poems, but I think you're talking about the one that, I think a lot of people who are listening can relate to this, but there's all these strange side effects and like unanticipated side effects to having a global pandemic. And one is that people were at home more. And what that was doing was kind of allowing animals to have a little bit of space, So is that the one?
That's exactly the one. I mean, I'm looking at a bird feeder right now, and we have birds. We have, there's a titmouse, several titmice, is that the plural? I don't know, who come by, and they were not in our backyard before. So, wow. I mean, it has just changed the ecology of New York City and many places. So let's please hear that COVID poem.
Okay, great. So this is called COVID One. This year, spring and summer decided to go on without us, to roll in the fields while we rolled in poison. The glory, the relaxed breaths of it. Spring and summer pressed against each other, not a reed fit between. They made us wait while the birds built and snakes sunned and crocs snapped at their frogs. The air milded and cleared far from our sick beds because of our sick beds. Oh, human, see, you are important. Biology, hubris, apocalypse, cages, carbon, energy. You are important, just not the way you think, just not the way you wish. Oh, really, Neville? Is that what you think?
Neville agrees. Neville is so cute. Neville is so cute. Yeah, and then, it's really hard to be an animal advocate right now and not see the connection between these zoonotic diseases and how we abuse animals. I wasn't going to do this, but can we listen to the pangolin one?
Yeah. So just brace yourself, folks. This one is a little bit more direct and intense, but it is what it is, right?
So many of us in this community are thinking this all the time. We just like, this wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have this if people didn't eat animals. And so would love to hear the way you express that in your own voice.
Right. I mean, it really is as simple as that. Right. It wouldn't be happening if we had a different relationship with other species, and it will keep happening as long as we keep having this relationship with other species, and it's
That's
frustrating
exactly right.
for people who think the way we and everybody who's listening do, just consider and think about other species, to have, the messages around COVID be about solving the problem now with Band-Aids rather than looking at the roots, not making the changes that we need to make. That frustration, I think this poem came out of that frustration. So
Which makes sense. You have climate change, you have references to climate change in the environment, and we're just, again, this is so similar. I feel like this is a practice run for when the shit hits the fan with climate change. Here we are with our Band-Aids and trying to be reactive and not proactive, when if we, more or less eliminated factory farming or intensive animal agriculture, or for those who can afford, the privileged among us who can afford not to eat animals, who don't live subsistently off, whatever. If we didn't, we'd be in such a better place. So that's a similar frustration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's hear this.
Okay. And a little bit of context, probably everybody knows this, but there is a theory that the start of it had to do with a bat's relationship to a pangolin, maybe, pooping on a pangolin, some way of, and then the pangolin in a wet market, then, yeah. Okay. COVID 2. Who was the pangolin? Caged in the truck, in the stack, in the market. What could her body, her bald protection, no protection, her smooth nail scales, no protection, do but uncurl and mark us? When did her cage unstack from the hens above, the pig below, the dog alongside? When did hands pull her smooth, balled up body and slit her throat for its tonic blood, cut her tissue for the pleasure of meat? Where moved the first virion in her body? Eye, neck, heart. Did its twisted ladders course 1,000 times, 1,000,000, through the mouths of her cells before the hand came down on her neck? And the pig below, the hens above, what poison cells course through their dread? How do we fill our bodies without her body? The hens above, and the pig below, and the dog alongside. How do we leave their lives and deaths alone? Leave their cells alone? Why can't we? To tear someone from her life, to cage her, to let her blood for our habit. Did we imagine no consequence? Do we see it now?
Okay, I have a question about your process with this. This is something obviously that, you're just sort of meditating on anyway in the day, right? Just throughout this whole process. At what point do you decide, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this out? Or is it just, could I? And what is that process like for you?
Because I'm a writer, because I think that way, when these questions arise, I think about putting them on the paper. So if I think, who was that pangolin? I'm going to be thinking about that as something to write about. If it's not like I walk through the world being like, every question I have is a potential, I'm not that way at all,
Yeah.
But there's this certain kind of question and a certain kind of, I can almost feel it in my body. Like I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling that frustration. I'm feeling that questioning, and it propels me to start asking that question in a written way, And I'm also aware, because I am an activist who wants to marry activism to art in the way that Dana Ellen does, the way that Jane O'Hara does. I'm thinking about the piece that's coming, not just as my own musings, you know, but as something that could potentially move the conversation forward, open the way that people think.
Right.
You know, and I think that's part of an artist's job. And not all artists feel this way. And I'm fine with there being artists who are like, you know, driven by aesthetics, and I'm also driven by aesthetics. If this wasn't absolutely gorgeous to me and give me like deep pleasure, it wouldn't be on my wall, you know. But I think all of us have a responsibility to be those people in a society who take that step back. I mean, you know, you're a filmmaker, right? So to take this step back and go, really? You know, about whatever's going on, to be questioning what is considered normal, to know that there is no normal, to know that we're constructing a normal, and being, you know, part of what's really questioning that and saying why and how should this change. To me, that feels like vital work for artists as well as other people, right? But that we have also that responsibility. So I'd like a poem like this to be part of that conversation.
It certainly is. I would love to hear about some of the reactions that you've gotten from people. What have been some of the most meaningful and rewarding responses that you've gotten from folks who've read your poems from Kind?
Well, you know, I would say it breaks into two camps. And what's interesting is I had the same experience with Visiting Days, which is my last book, the one that you mentioned that deals with incarceration.
I love that book.
Yay. With both of them, I would say that the positive reactions come from two camps. One is from people who are kind of already in the camp. And so for them, so for animal people, in the case of Kind, what it is it's an affirmation, it's inspiration, it feels like there's somebody who gets it, you know. With Visiting Days, I would call that camp people who are incarcerated, who feel it and feel seen and feel like glad that there's somebody, an ally, you know, who's in their corner. Also for the family members of people who are incarcerated, you know, so a mother saying my son is a lifer and this book speaks to me, you know. My brother has been incarcerated for 20 years and this book speaks to me. My husband is incarcerated, right? So
I mean, I think it was near and dear to my heart because of my family members, you know, my family member who has been incarcerated several times. So I think it absolutely, woo, I have a kitten here. Do you want to see her? Yeah, this is, she's about to be incarcerated in the bathroom. This is Marigold.
Hi, Marigold.
You're famous, Marigold.
Don't put me in the bathroom, Mother.
Right.
So that's like, you know, one camp, but the other camp, which is really more the intended camp, is people who have not thought that much about these issues and are like, oh, right? You know, it's like, oh, so not everybody incarcerated is a monster who should be languishing. Oh, so animals also, so that I could feel the way I feel about my dog, I could feel that way about a chicken. I could feel that way about a pig. Oh, that's what happens in the dairy industry. So I can sit with my cup of yogurt or lick my ice cream. Oh, you know, so that kind of stuff. So when people give me that message, that is also extremely satisfying. So both are satisfying, but you know, and what I love is when animal people get Kind for those people in their lives who are like, who love their dog, who like poems, who like literature, who are, you know, up for a beautiful new book, you know, and quietly, you know, by putting it out into, who donate it to their local library.
Sure.
That's big when people donate to their library, you know, getting it into people's hands who aren't quite there. So I think that's what some people are doing is they're getting a copy for themselves, but they're getting that extra copy for like, you know.
Yeah.
So that's fun. And I sell them on my website, and then people say like, oh, inscribe this one to so and so or whatever. And that makes me happy. So yeah, so that's, and I guess they both give me a lot of pleasure, that those two groups.
Sure.
But I can't say I'm not excited by these getting into the hands of people who like could handle a change, you know?
Absolutely. I know we'll say the poems that we've read are some of the more emotional ones that, are a little bit tougher to think about sometimes, but there are just poems that are just gorgeous and life affirming. I mean, some of your poetry about animals, it's a celebration of animals, and it's a celebration of the environment and of kind people.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, kind, the title kind, it's almost like it's an invitation to be kind. But it's also, it speaks to humankind, animal kind. We want to talk about the title, how you came up with the title?
Yeah, I like that I haven't heard that before. I think that's amazing, that invitation idea. So yeah, I mean, it's like at least triple entendre, right? So what kind are we, right? And I mean right? So like what kind is she versus he, right? Or he versus she, right? We don't know if they're, but why is this kind, right? What kind are you? And then kind as in kindness. And then what kind of person am I?
Right.
In relation to all of this, And I think one of the things about the book is, like, I describe it as a book that's about the dynamic between humans and other animals in our time and place, but it's also about what it's like to be the kind of person who cares about that.
Right.
In a society that often doesn't.
And that's hard. It's hard. I mean, obviously, I think sometimes we can get frustrated with ourselves and say, well, I'm not the one being abused, right? And then just dismiss the pain that we experience when we open our eyes to the suffering, right? And so, there's some truth to that. Yeah, we're not on the slaughter line or whatever, but it doesn't mean we're not affected emotionally. And, I think the definition of a traumatic event is even just witnessing the death of an animal, and it can be, or traumatic injury of an animal. It could even be on video. It could be anything that's real. Like, that's a real traumatic event for us emotionally and so forth. And so but I think that often we can just sort of discount our feelings about it. But what I love about this is it gives those of us who perhaps feel alone a sense of community, right? So that we don't feel crazy. If you're the only one who sees the world in this way, it's sort of like the Matrix, which pill are you taking here? If you see the world in this way, it can be a very alienating experience. But then when you connect, if you watch a video like this and you hear an artist who devotes her life to this stuff, putting it into words, it's so powerful. It's so affirming. And I hope people find you and can be in community with you, because you're a lovely person.
Thank you.
And then I do obviously see a through line here, because your work for animals and for those who are incarcerated, I mean, there's obviously, a through line. I mean, these animals are caged. They have no bodily autonomy, and then people in the prison system have no bodily autonomy. Do you want to speak to that correlation, and maybe a little bit of history into how you came to this animal rights work and the prison work too?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they feel similar to me in that it's about, I've always been, and so this kind of answers your question, like, I've always been fascinated by and repelled by the way that human beings wield power.
Okay.
Thanks, David. Yeah, we're just really into lording over. We're really into power. And so there's all these artificial constructions that we've set up because we're really hierarchical.
Yeah.
So we've got, so when I say all these different ones, so I've got like, man over woman, white over non-white, straight over not straight, right? Born in America versus somebody who's not born in America. Somehow that's a value judgment about who you are as a human being. If you were, born in, yeah. And then there's human, other animals. Yeah. And all of these have because you've got, if we're on this hierarchy, we might have, man, and then we might have woman, but gay woman is going to be, right? And so we're gonna keep like going down the pyramid,
Yeah.
And it seems like, hey, if I can't lord power over you, I'm going to lord it over you. Mm-hmm. So you'll have somebody, like say, who's a corrections officer in a facility who has no power out in society.
Yes.
But in there, he's got power.
Yes.
Right? Or somebody who has no power among humans, but over that dog.
Yes.
Now I've got, so that idea of just deep injustice in power structures moves me. And so it moves me in terms of incarceration, and it moves me in terms of animal issues. And it moves me in the other ways I mentioned too, but those seem to be the ones that I've really sunk my claws into.
Well, it's beautiful. What gets me, it floors me, to be honest, is whenever on the Vegucated page we post something about, anti-discrimination or something more intersectional that doesn't directly apply to farm animals, for example, we get so much backlash. We get people telling us to stay in our lane. And I say, this is exactly our lane.
Absolutely.
Our lane is to look at how, the interconnected forms of oppression, and to uplift those who have no power and who have been oppressed. And, this is not something new. This has gone on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But like you said, just because it's been going on for that long doesn't mean that it should still be that way. Hi.
I'm sorry.
Want to say hi?
I didn't realize that. Are you in a proper thing?
Yes, proper thing. What's going on?
You didn't know about the proper thing, David?
My husband, he's an animal lawyer.
Gretchen.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yes.
How are you?
You're listening to this. You should be hanging on my every word. What gives?
Well, I was too busy hanging on other words you said previously, and I forgot about these particular words that you were saying.
Excellent comeback.
I will leave you two.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries. Anyway, it just floors me that this is somehow that we can sort of compartmentalize that animals who are, so innocent and can, and so voiceless, they are the ones who deserve our championing. But those who have a little more agency, but actually who've been the products, of hundreds or thousands of years of oppression, or somehow are fine after, a few decades of quote unquote equality, so it's just.
Yeah, that is incredibly frustrating. I mean, it's all the same thing, and you cannot tease those apart, and they're just not either or. But you can't. Of course, there's room for you to care about all of it.
Compassion is not a limited resource; it's a self-renewing one. I feel like the more compassion you have for this individual group here, the more compassion
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the same things that we criticize people for in terms of the way that they think. I mean, this idea of the human mind dismissing groups, right? Which denies individuality. So that's just a group of chickens. There's no individuality there, right? Yeah. That's a group of chickens. So that same person who's like, that's ridiculous. If, science does not dictate that like this species gets personalities and this species doesn't. Like that's actually unscientific, right? I mean, if you spend time with 5 chickens, you're going to see 5 different personalities, right?
Very much so.
But so that same person who can say, oh, I see that there's differentiation among this group of birds, can't see that there's differentiation in a group of men who have been shoved into a prison. There's no differentiation there. there's no differentiation in a group of family members who are huddled at the border wondering if they're going to see their children. I mean, hello, it's all the same.
It's all the same. Oh, thank you, Gretchen. I would like to go backwards a little bit into your sort of coming into veganism and animal rights. How old were you? What happened? Did you have any sort of mentors or role models? And then when did you get into writing, and how did they marry each other?
Right. So word nerd from go, like reading when I was 2, just really in love with language as of that age, wrote some, poems as a kid, and then not for a really long time. So, the vegan thing, animal lover from go. I think I came out of the womb being like, where's it? I need a dog, like now. I mean, I'm 50 years old and I still like look at my dogs and can't believe I get to live with dogs, because I was denied dogs until I was 11. Then we finally got a dog. So that's, big animal person. I was in a class when I was 13, and it was like a summer class for word nerds. And we were reading a story, and there was a graphic image of a state fair, of a lamb at a state fair. And I said, oh, that's just terrible. And this kid in the class was like, well, are you a vegetarian? And I was like, no. And he was like, well.
Was he a vegetarian, or he was just?
I think he might have just been busting my chops, but he completely changed my life. Huh. Same as Danny. He has no idea. I don't remember his last name. Totally changed, because I was like, oh, and it took me a couple months, but a couple months later, I just put down my fork and I was like, I'm done. And my parents were like, yeah, right. Because I have no willpower. And that was it. So that was it for vegetarianism. But okay. I didn't know jack about eggs and dairy. And I didn't know jack. Fast forward a good 20 years, living in the Hudson Valley, start hanging out with people who are involved with farm animal sanctuaries. Because I was like, oh, I'm a vegetarian. This is my wheelhouse, and I'm doing great. I'm doing what I need to do, right? And then they schooled me. And they should have schooled me. And they were nice about it, but they were firm about it. Different people in their different ways telling me what the deal is. And that was tough. And then I guess about 13 years. So I was like 23 years vegetarian, and I'm like 13, 14 years vegan. Okay. Man, does it get easier out there, but
then you went on to co-write with Jenny Brown, The Lucky Ones, which was her memoir about founding Woodstock Farm Animal Sanctuary. So exactly. Isn't that interesting how you were a newbie being schooled in this sort of area, and then you sort of, that was one of your first animal rights projects besides,
yeah.
Is writing that book and being able to share her story.
And that came out the year before Kind.
Right.
What happened with the poems is that I was at a writer's retreat. There's like these artist residencies where it's incredible. Like you get to go and write all day, and they cook for you, and they're like, it's disgusting. It's fantastic. So I'm there with a bunch of other artists, and they are just so not on the same page when it comes to animal stuff. So here I'm in Vermont. I'm in this like beautiful, idyllic retreat situation. I'm with all these people who seem so lefty and artsy, and they are just like, bring on the pepperoni, And I just like, I kind of had a nervous breakdown, But one day I walked into the dining room, and they're like, oh, she's here. They had been talking about something. And what they had been talking about is that one of them had killed a mouse in his room that he was bothered by, And I just caught my breath, and I thought, this is not your house. This is that mouse's house. It's not your house, dude. You're here for 4 weeks. You hear a little scratching. It bothers you so much you took somebody's life who has like a family. I mean, is this a family show? Like, can I say fuck off? I was very angry, Right. And it led me, I was despairing. And it led to a poem, which is called God's Glory. And I'll just show you the image because that's one of the images that Gus, my husband, made for the book. But, you know, here, hi.
Love that one. So
Can I not get this right?
there we go. There.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, so there's the poem, God's Glory. But it's like, who are you? And why are you so much better?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you to be so much better, right?
Also, why did you have to go straight to killing? I mean, I mean, there are other ways of living sort of in community with animals so that they're not treading upon you and you're not treading upon them, you know.
We have a habit.
You know, and we did remove some mice, 4 mice recently, but we used the humane traps. So there, you know, why go straight to killing? That just seems
absolutely. So yeah, we have a humane trap upstairs right now. You know, it's like but like, yeah, you know, there's a way. Can we think about things a different way? Can we treat others with respect and figure out solutions that way? You know, so that led to several more poems, and that is how this book was born. Because there I was for weeks feeling very lonely.
Yeah.
Feeling very lonely with what was going on with me and that dynamic, because I really care about people and I like people. It's not easy for me to be like, oh, who cares? You know, I'm going to do me. It's like, no, that really makes me sad.
Yeah.
That this is how we are.
And also I do feel like people who sort of get it and the light bulb goes off, they get mad at themselves. I know I'm mad at myself because I was just like you. I loved all animals growing up. And any kind of injustice towards a person or an animal just really got to me. Any kind of bullying, you know, that whole, it's all bullying. It's different forms of bullying. So anyway, and then now I wish that it had been before I was 26, that I had sort of had the moment and the person who helped mentor me, whatever, so 26 years of being part of that system that hurt so many, including myself, you know, my health, the environment, you know, there's obviously so much pollution and environmental degradation that is, you know, comes from agriculture and threatens our very existence, that threatens my children's lives and their existence.
Right.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
So I think a lot of people on this page can definitely relate to the impetus to reach out with care. And I feel like, I mean, do you agree that if you come from a place of compassion and respect, then the messages are going to be better received?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And like with you, I could be like, I was so firm, you know, but when I'm engaged with people, of course, because, you know, you as a 25-year-old were an amazing person who hadn't gotten it yet.
Yeah.
And same with me, shoving, you know, however many bowls of cottage cheese in my face. Like, I was a good person. I hadn't gotten it yet.
Yeah.
Everybody out there is a good person who hasn't gotten it yet, or who has gotten it, and then there's occasionally, you know, a couple people who will never get it and don't want to get it. And yeah, they're out there too. But a lot of people are in that. And I approach them the way that I wanted to be approached.
Exactly.
Nicely, you know?
Nicely, with respect. I love Victoria Moran's term for people who haven't really seen the light yet, but who are like good people. She calls them pre-vegans.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So I think you know, this is a wonderful collection for the pre-vegans among us.
Yeah.
How has this been received in the poetry community? I mean, I'm obviously on your list, your mailing list, so I get to see all of the wonderful, you know, all the lauding from that community. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, you know, this is a small book from a small press. Like, I'm not winning the Nobel, and like, you know, but people do respect these as poems, right? They're not activist screeds, because if I wanted to write an activist screed, I would do that. You know, they're poems.
Yeah.
And the same way as Dana is like respected in the art world because her craft is amazing, right? And I work on my craft, and I have a master's degree in poetry writing, and, you know, and that matters to me. And so I think people in that world can see that. The foreword to this book was written by Tim Siebels, who's an amazing poet who I love dearly, and was approaching it very much as, somebody of the poetry world, or, rather than of the animal world. And then there's these wonderful people who are kind of crossover. And so I put in that category the incredible poet Nicole Brown, who's an animal person and very much a poet, And so her input, she just recommended it. It was in Orion magazine, like 21 poetry books that we recommend. And, she had written something about it. So there's some kind of crossover action for people who are moved by. That said, there are publishing houses that would never touch this. They don't feel that this is important enough. And there are journals who wouldn't touch it, so mixed bag, I guess. Yeah, but
yeah, I mean, I think anybody doing any kind of art in this space, obviously, as a filmmaker too, there are film festivals who wanted nothing to do with my documentary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and their audiences who wanted nothing to do with it, right? So that's just a challenge when you challenge society in general, and the sort of curators of the space haven't challenged themselves in this way, and they say, well, they either they devalue what you're doing because they don't want to look at themselves, or maybe they value it, but they don't see an audience for it.
Right. Well, they don't. Yeah, so, they're not giving people the benefit of that doubt.
They also don't know. They also just don't know the space. If they're not in the vegan animal rights space, they don't know it, and so they don't know how to reach people in it. So that's a challenge too. So I've been on the publishing. I used to work for HarperCollins, so I've been on that end of it. Mm-hmm. You have to guarantee sort of sales. You have to do a profit and loss statement at the end of the day. So I understand the challenges, but it's just frustrating. And I think that's another reason why we are often relegated to having to self-publish or self-distribute our films or art.
Right, and it's a catch-22 because if people aren't exposed to it, you're not going to know if they would like it, and they're not going to know if they could change, right? So
I do have this feeling, Gretchen, and maybe it's just because I like to think of myself as being pretty prescient, but I have a feeling that there are going to be people who are going to look back at your work and really see you as a pioneer. Yeah, they're really going to see you as a pioneer.
Am I going to be wearing like a pioneer, like a little lacy and?
You're going to be wearing a faux raccoon hat with a faux raccoon
tail.
No, but what I'm saying is maybe, down the line, people can look backward, just as like now we're finally celebrating some of the women writers, the women artists, the writers of color and so forth, who had been overlooked because they weren't valued and their voice was not valued at that time, right. Or even just artists, fine arts, right? Fine artists. Yeah. Like it's so sad. My son was introduced to Yayoi Kusama, the artist, and she is, old and I think in a mental institution. And so she has been doing this amazing work, and Andy Warhol and all these other people got the fame and the glory. And only now, but she's like, she's not really in the world anymore. And it's just, but anyway, the point is, just because this is not appreciated necessarily on the mainstream level now, this kind of work doesn't mean that it won't be down the line, because hindsight is 2020. And I think our challenge now is, obviously we can look back at our ancestors and see where they're on the right or wrong side of history. And I think people will be looking back at us and studying who was on the right and the wrong side of history in these different art spaces. And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like somebody's going to be writing a paper about Gretchen Primack. And
I love that you think that. I hope. Yeah, that would be amazing to feel, to feel appreciated.
Who else is really doing this right now? Are there any poets that you would recommend? Obviously, who do you recommend that maybe they're not fully vegan, fully animal rights, but sort of get it? Or are there any other animal rights vegan poets who just don't have the audience yet? Or are you really the lone wolf in this space?
There are a bunch of poets who are vegan but that doesn't mean that they're doing overtly vegan activist work.
Also,
But,
they could be vegan for different reasons, right? You can be vegan for health reasons or whatever, right?
Oh, but I mean, these are people I know, and they are animal
Okay.
lover, you know.
Okay.
But Mr. Hip, Donald Vincent, has done, you know, overt activist work. There's a poet who she hasn't published yet, but she has animal rights poems that hopefully will get collected, named Chloe Hansen. And she's a big fan of Kind. And, you know, sometimes people will come to this work. Ashley Capps in North Carolina is wonderful. And Nicole Brown, who I mentioned, is doing more. She's working now on a serious animal book. So we're hoping that'll get into the world soon. And Lantern is going to put another poet out in a few months, which is wonderful. So we need to watch out for her. And they are overt animal rights poems.
Nice.
Beautiful. So that is terrific. I can put her name in the chat. And yeah, but there isn't really a text yet like this text. You know, it's like, this is a collection about how we deal with animals. It's not one poem in a thing or like hitting it obliquely. It's like hitting it in all different facets and angles and, you know, species and ways of thinking. And, you know, that hasn't happened, but you know, hopefully it'll be more and more, you know.
I think it will. And, you know, you're a trailblazer in that regard. And that's, you know, that's fun to think about. Do you have, and I see we're at 45 minutes and I think we should start to wrap it up. But is there what do you see for yourself in the future? Like what sort of, I mean, this is so annoying because I get this question too all the time. Like I've just released a project. Like, what are you doing next? I'm like, this, you know?
Yeah, I know. Right. Like it's such a big job, just like getting your work out there. Right. Like that's a job.
Yeah. That's
work, and then there's
like what's on your bucket list? You know, do you have anything on your bucket list for, kitty cat, anything that's on your bucket list in terms of what you want to do as a poet or as an activist, you know, either way?
I don't know, but I'm really eager to find out. Like I like being approached about working on something maybe in collaboration. That would be exciting. Visiting Days, the book that's set in prison, is a collection of what's called persona poems, and that's poems in the voice of people who are incarcerated in this imaginary prison, right? Which is a lot like the ones where I've taught. So, so like they're kind of like dramatic monologues, and people have suggested, what about that being staged? And I thought, that would be amazing. You know, some way. I guess I'm just thinking off the top of my head because your question is a good one. I hadn't really thought in that way, but I like the idea of of having the work enter other kinds of media, stage, film, you know, video, like all kinds of possibilities for, you know, other books, like in anthologies, you know, things like that kind of come at it in different ways. Because I am so interested in, there's this incredible artist based in the UK named Helen Barker, who has made 2 videos from my poems, one from Visiting Days and one called Love This from Kind.
Love that
you're a fan. That's a lot of people, like Carol Adams put that one, she reprinted that one in the 25th anniversary of the Sexual Politics of Meat. You know, people have come to my poems that way, you know. But so she made this unbelievable video from Love This. So the idea of the poems like making their way into other media is super exciting to me. So that's something.
Oh, hello. Thank you, Kitty.
So sweet. So sweet, Marigold.
Really sweet. Well, I love that you're present and open to the universe and what can come next. So I feel like so much of what you've done is in response to really pressing issues. So hopefully we don't need another pandemic or global crisis to inspire more work on your part.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yes, but I would love to. Can we end, Kitty Cat? I'm about to incarcerate you. Is there a way that we can end on a poem? Could we end on a poem? Great.
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want to? I know you mentioned Holstein, and we also talked about one about fish. Do you have a preference? And then we'll just hope that people get their hands on a copy of the book to hear the other.
Well, you have one about your cat. Now that I have this cat here, you have a lovely cat one that I posted, I think, on your birthday. That just really speaks to the intimate relationship that we have with our companion animals.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. It's called Marie.
Marie. Is that okay? Because we had some heavier ones earlier.
Yeah. Oh my God. Totally. And it's got another Dana Ellen painting with it. My God, I cannot. It wants me to do exactly the opposite of what I want to do.
Yes.
So yeah, that was okay. I invented a word for this poem because it didn't exist in English, what I wanted to say. So see if you can, you'll catch that.
Okay.
Here is an old cat, a lump on my lap, a wisp, a shrup on the world, a center only to me, myself only a shrup on the world, a wisp of lint in its long afternoon. Her cat things will fade out, the grooming tugs and snorts, the winter curl and heat stretch, how she leans her face against my face and relaxes it there. Like my human things will fade out, the hair tucking, cake icing, the pen to paper. And neither of us will mean, though she means and means to me now, and I make her content, and she me.
Why does that make me want to cry on YouTube? I just want to cry. Oh, that's so beautiful. A shrup.
Yep. Shrup.
Is that what just came into your head? You just came into your head.
Yeah, I just didn't know how else to say it.
I love it. Do you ever, last question and then we'll close, but do you ever work on a poem and you just don't have the word right? And I was in one of my, English major, one of my English classes, I forget who it was, Sharon Olds, I don't remember. One of the poets we studied used to put a poem on her fridge and she would just let it sit there and she would go back to find the right word. Do you do that? Do you go back and revisit or just fine tune?
Oh yeah. That's can you hear Neville snoring?
I hear Neville snoring. I do.
That's really cute, except in all night, because that's not cute. But it does happen all night. Absolutely. It's like I'm going along and I'm like, that's not the word. And sometimes I'll just put a line waiting for the word. Yeah. And sometimes I'll put a word knowing that it's not quite right.
Yeah. Sometimes
I'll put a word and then I'll put 4 more words that might be it, and then keep going. And then I'll go back. It's easy for me to work with. I feel like it's very pliable. I don't mind changing things up, and until it's right.
Until it's right. Well, these poems are all right. They're all beautiful. Anybody who listens to these knows that they are. Get your hands on this book. It is a revelation. Recently, I introduced you to Kathy Freston.
Yeah.
And she read it. And what did she say? I forget what she said. She loved it.
She loved it.
Yeah.
She loved it. Yeah.
She was amazed. She was floored. Everybody who gets this book is floored, especially if you're someone who really enjoys literature or animals, obviously. So, Gretchen, it's been my intense honor and pleasure to be able to chat with you. Thank you to everybody who's joined and listened. Please follow Gretchen. You're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. Go to GretchenPrimack.com, get your autographed copy for your friends, your poetry lovers, and your animal lovers in your life. I adore you. I can't wait to see you next time and to see what else you've got up your sleeve, darling.
Oh, such a pleasure to be with you. I could do it all day long.
Well, we need to get together soon. We do.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your April, the last few days of your poetry month, and tune in for more special guests on the Vegcated Instagram and Facebook, and do follow Gretchen as well. All right. Have a good day.